This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out it was my Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate Pina Colada and Thai iced coffee flavored creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
So good, so good, so good.
Get ready, because it's time to save at your Nordstrom Rack store. Now through February 23rd, take an extra 40% off red tag clearance boots, jackets, and sweaters. We're talking the best cold weather styles from Vince, Cole Haan, Sam Edelman, and more. All on sale for even less. All sales final. You never know what you'll find, but you know it's gonna be so good. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
You know what's smart? Enjoying a fresh gourmet meal at home that you didn't have to cook. Meet Factor, your loophole in the laws of mealtime. Chef-crafted meals delivered with a tap, ready in just 2 minutes. You know what's even smarter? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Factor is dietitian approved, chef prepared, and you plated. Pretty smart, huh? Refresh your routine and eat smart with Factor. Learn more at factormeals.com.
Minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
That's one small step for man.
One eyewitness, one major pop cultural event. You Had to Be There uncovers stories that shed light on our most iconic moments.
Like the real enemy.
Each episode, our host, Julia Thompson, takes on the task of finding and interviewing one person within 48 hours who was there, with no idea what their event will be. Come along for the ride.
Hey, Julia, it's Wet from Hi Barr. You ready for your assignment?
Yeah, I'm ready for my assignment. Yep.
Julia, your assignment for this episode of You Had to Be There is to find someone who was in attendance for the Miracle on Ice, a game of epic Cold War proportions between the United States and the Soviet Union at the Winter Olympics in Lake Placid, New York on February 22nd, 1980, 45 years ago this month. Julia, do you believe in miracles?
Yeah, I think I do.
Starting now, you have 48 hours to find someone who was there and interview them. Good luck and have fun.
McClanahan is there. The puck is still loose. 11 seconds. You've got 10 seconds. The countdown going on right now. Morrow up to Schultz. 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Hi, my name is Julia Thompson, and I am the host of You Had to Be There. Do I believe in miracles? Yes. Yes, I do. But was this a miracle? Was this game a miracle? Why was this such an insurmountable game for the American team? Why are we still talking about it 45 years later? Yes, it was the height of the Cold War, and it was an underdog toppling over the champions. But still, 45 years, that's a long time. Another interesting tidbit was that the February 22nd game between the dominant Soviet Union and the young, scrappy American team was not even the gold medal defining game. So again, why You Had to Be There moment? I reach out to a couple of journalists who I hope can answer these questions. I also drop a line of the Hockey Hall of Fame. They're closed. While I wait for the journalists to write me back, I cue up the game. An idea flashes in my mind. Lake Placid. I go there sometimes during the summer, and the Olympic Village is still very much a tourist site. Maybe there is someone working in that Olympic complex who was there. Maybe someone in that rink where they played. Maybe some old guy sharpening skates in the back room. Maybe?
Hello, thank you for calling the Olympic Center. This is Megan speaking. How may I help you?
Hey, Megan. My name's Julia Thompson. I'm actually working on a podcast. I'm a podcast producer. And I'm working currently on an episode about the 1980 Olympics and the hockey game between the USSR, Soviet Union, and the U.S., the Miracle on Ice game.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just was hoping if you could help me out. I'm trying to find somebody that was there at the event, either a player or a fan or somebody working at the rink. Yeah, so I just thought I'd try you and see if you could help me find somebody.
Let's see. I can either put you in touch with the 1980 hockey team. They maintain a social media presence, and I have their contact information with their manager, if you'd like to reach out to one of their team members.
Sure. And then I just wanted to let you know, it's kind of a weird premise for a podcast because I actually have to find somebody in 48 hours that was there.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second. I'm going to see if I can't help you out. I'm going to go step upstairs and see if Mr. Harrington is still standing up there at the table.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Well, that's a 1980 hockey player, so I'm going to find out if he's available to talk to you. So bear with me. If not, I will give you a call back in a few moments, okay?
Okay, cool. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Hello?
Hi, this is Megan from the Olympic Center. How are you doing?
Good. Hi, Megan. How are you?
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, cool. We're calling you from the locker rooms downstairs in the 80 rink, so I wanted to make sure you could hear us through all the different layers of stuff. So I'm going to hand the phone over to Denice, and she's going to talk to you. She was at the 80 game, okay?
You're the best, Megan. Thank you. Are you?
I'll talk to you right after, okay?
All right, cool. Thanks.
Right. There you go. Her name's Gina. Put it right to your ear, or would you rather talk to me?
I got hearing aids, so if you put it on speaker.
Here it is on. So okay. Denice has hearing aids. So it's a little hard for her to hear, okay?
Okay, can you hear me, Denice?
I can, thank you.
How's it going?
Very good, thank you. A little chilly.
I heard that you were at the 1980 USSR versus USA Olympic game in 1980. Is that true?
I was. I worked for the town of North Elba. So for 2 weeks, we were not able to work. So I volunteered at the school, which is right next door to the building, and sending out press releases. So we were given press passes, but we had no tickets. But we were, could get in with press passes.
So wait, where were you working?
I worked for the town of North Elba, ELBA. I was deputy town clerk and clerk to the supervisor.
So tell me about the game. How was it?
There was a lot of excitement for a little tiny village like Lake Placid, and it was just a memory I'll never forget. I'm 77 now, and it was just incredible to be able to be a part of it.
Do you remember where you were seated?
We had no seats. We had press passes, but no seats. So I was standing on the mezzanine.
Oh, do you have any specific memories you want to share?
Just the excitement of people and how the whole building was electric, and to be able to have our guys get that close and then all of a sudden be able to win the game, it was just something you'll never forget. It really was. It was just a once in a lifetime experience. My name is Denice, Denice Fredericks, Fredericks, and I was here at the game in 1980 in Lake Placid, New York. I'm a native here working at the Olympic Center.
And what are you doing now working at the Olympic Center?
We are called guest services. We aid people to, if they have questions about the building. We help with the hockey games. We help with any events that they have, public skating, curling.
Did you get to meet any of the players in 1980?
What was really awesome was they were here prior to the game. They came here, and I don't know whether it was for a practice and I can't remember what it was for, back prior to the Olympics. and played here. And at that time, I had a poster and they all signed it prior to the Olympics. And then when they won, it was just even more awesome. And I still have that poster after all these years.
And where do you have it hanging up?
In my living room.
An email pops in my inbox that evening from an AOL account. I love the nostalgia of AOL.com. Maybe they'll have a comeback. Sorry, I digress. The email happens to be from one of the great New York sports journalists. Check. I find my second person in 48 hours that was at the 1980 February 22nd game, USSR versus the United States of America.
Yeah, it's Gerald Eskenazi, although Gerald was the way the New York Times insisted I use my first name. And I was with the New York Times from 1959 to about 2004. And very proud to say that my 8,000 bylines are the second highest number of bylines in the history of the newspaper.
Cool. So can we talk a little bit about February 22nd, 1980? Were you at the game between the Soviet Union and the United States on February 22nd, 1980?
I was in the Lake Placid Arena, a tiny 8,000 seat old place shaped like a sort of cockfighting amphitheater. Very, very steeply sloped seats. That was in fact the press box was so small we had no room for this newfangled thing we called a computer. So the computer was in the basement, and the reporters were upstairs in the press box.
All right, so let's talk about how you got to this game. I read a little bit about it, but you were you a hockey fan? Like, how did you know you wanted to cover this game?
Well, the New York Times, didn't really look much at hockey. And so one day, sometime in the mid-1960s, I don't remember the year, I was the office reporter, a young guy, and the assistant sports editor looked at the schedule and said, "Hey, the Rangers are opening the season tonight." And this was at noon. And he said, "You're going to Boston." And I flew to Boston, seeing my very first hockey game, and wrote about it. Anyway, I became pretty good at it because I used a couple of adjectives which were never used at the New York Times. The New York Times was very, very staid in its and traditional in its writing. And my hockey story made an impact on the editors. And the next thing I knew, I was writing about the New York Rangers. Well, anyway, by 1980, I wasn't doing the Rangers anymore. I was covering the Jets football team, and the U.S. was putting together this very young hockey team for the Olympics, and they assigned me to cover them. And I wound up, meeting this fellow Herb Brooks, this sort of nervy guy, and a bunch of young players. And the Times, however, told me that they were not going to send me to the Olympics because they didn't have the money to do it. It was newspapers were driven, like many industries, just by how the economy was, and the economy at that time there were some issues. So I went to the assistant managing editor, a fellow named Arthur Gelb, and I said, "Look, Arthur, I believe that this young hockey team is going to be doing some really good stuff." And he recanted and said, "Okay," and they sent me to Lake Placid. That's where the whole thing from my adventure with them, continued and became, I guess, the biggest story of my career. And the U.S. starts off and beats a couple of the other countries. Everybody beat Romania, and I think if Romania has a hockey team, I couldn't believe it. And the next thing I know, it's a Friday afternoon, and the game starts at 5:00 in the afternoon, and no U.S. live television, because who wants to watch hockey at 5:00 in the afternoon? There's very strange starting time, and the reason they had a 5:00 starting time was that it was going to be midnight in Moscow. And if they started it later, it would be 3 a.m. in the morning. and who in Russia would be watching hockey at 3 a.m? So in deference to the Soviets, they started the hockey game at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. What happened was that I could tell whoever I wanted, but the networks didn't. The networks, went on the 6 o'clock news, or actually, I think was there 7 o'clock news? Yeah, and there were no announcements. There was nothing breaking in, or especially on ABC, which was Channel 7 in New York. They didn't want to say anything. So when the game was over, it was a tape delayed game. They showed it probably around 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, but they didn't show it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So in order to keep their viewership, ABC did not mention the result of the game.
So how many people were into hockey in the United States at this point?
It had a very, very intense fan base, but it was not a national sport by any means. It had only about 10 years earlier expanded to 12 clubs. There had been no hockey west of the Mississippi until the late 60s. It had been a 6-team league. The farthest team west was Chicago. So hockey, was more. Was a niche sport, I guess, and at a lot of colleges, it was really an Ivy League hockey thing, and in the North Country. When I say North Country, I mean Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan. They all played hockey, and of course the Ivy League.
So I'm going to take a moment to digress. Where are you from?
I'm from Brooklyn.
Where in Brooklyn?
I'm from East New York.
So you're a Brooklyn guy.
Yeah.
Were you an athlete?
Well, I was a street athlete. No, I was never any kind of formal athlete. I did play soccer in college. I played intramural soccer at City College of New York. But when you say I was an athlete, I played every street game that you could imagine, and we played in the sandlots. But I was not a team. There were no teams where I lived, and I was not good enough to be on a school team.
So how was it, like when you first started watching hockey, what did you make of it?
I was as taken by the players, by the fans in the stands, as I was by the players. They wanted blood. They loved fighting, the fans. But the players, I quickly found as I started to cover them, as I started to write about hockey, these guys, these Canadians, they were all off the ice. They were very quiet guys, very unassuming. Never used the words me or my. They were Canadian, and I guess that was whatever the stereotype of Canadians were, these hockey players were. They played for $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a year when I was covering them. This was pro hockey players. And everything was a team. It was the words my and me would not part of their vocabulary.
No, I was just going to ask. So you're from Brooklyn. You play baseball, street games, whatever. You go to your game. You're just as much interested as the athletes as the fans, mostly because they're out for blood, and that was sort of interesting. From that, going to the Olympic Games at Lake Placid, what was the fan base there?
Fans at the hockey game were real hockey fans. They were not bloodthirsty. And when they beat the Soviet Union, it was the first time you heard the chant USA, USA. Now it's pretty standard. And so what they were rooting for the United States. Again, remember that this was the Cold War. They were called the Soviet Union then. They had not broken up. They were not to break up for another 10 years. They had won 4 straight Olympics. And here is this young, upstart American team playing this new style of hockey, and they're beating the big bad Soviets. And there was, like I say, there were between 6,000 and 8,000 fans in the place, all hockey fans. I mean, you're not going to come to Lake Placid unless you're a hockey fan.
I didn't mention this earlier, but I will now. I was perusing the National Hockey Hall of Fame website, looking for leads and came across this interesting little bit of history. There was this hockey superfan and well-known radio announcer, Curt Chaplin. He worked with Don Imus, Howard Cosell, Howard Stern, and was a sports reporter sidekick on WNEW FM's popular rock and roll morning show from 86 to 91. Well, Curt happened to be in the rink during the 1980 game, doing a play-by-play in his audio recorder. He was working for ABC at the time, but did not do the play-by-play for their purposes. He was just sort of doing it. Fast forward 30 years, he finds a recording in his closet and submits it to the Hockey Hall of Fame, where it now sits on display as part of the 1980 exhibit at the National Hockey Museum. When I was reaching out to journalists at the start of my day, I reached out to Curt. And again, within the 48 hours, he gets back to me too. So he'll enter the episode here, at an opportune moment. Because, well, he is one of those hockey fans that Jerry is speaking about. And he sure knows how to call a game. From here on out, the clips I used from the game are from Curt's 1980 play-by-play he recorded in 1980, not Al Michaels. We've heard enough Al Michaels. Okay, Al Michaels is incredible, but for the purposes of You Had to Be There, we're going with Curt Chaplin.
Ladies and gentlemen, and now, there he is, the one, the only, Curt Chaplin. There, that's my introduction.
That's pretty good.
Of myself. Have you ever met anybody else who was at the game?
Yes. I met a New York Times journalist.
Oh.
And
who was there from the Times? Murray Chass? Or
Gerald
Eskenazi?
Yes. Do you know him?
Well, I knew him back then. Yeah, sure. That was us on the beat, you know. He was one of the guys on the beat, sports beat, like I was. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about him when we spoke is that he's from Brooklyn and he knew nothing about hockey until he was sort of put on the beat.
You're guaranteed to get an interesting perspective that way instead of like something that's baked in already, you know, like a baked in cliche, a way of covering hockey or any sport or any stories, anything. Yeah, you put somebody who's never done it before on it and who's a good journalist and smart, then you'll get something good.
Totally. So can you tell me why were you there? Why were you at the 1980 hockey? Yeah. Why were you at the hockey game?
Why was I there? Well, I was outside cleaning the sidewalks. No, that's not how I got there at all. No. I got there, let's see, it was 1980. So I was like 4 years into my career as a broadcast journalist at that time. And I was on about my third job in radio journal and broadcast journalism at that time. And that job was, I was working for ABC Radio Network Sports, ABC. And it was cool because Howard Cosell did a daily show on ABC called Speaking of Sports. Like the roster of talent at the ABC Radio Network in those days, radio was a big deal. Radio sports was a big deal. I don't mean play-by-play. I mean like these guys had daily commentaries. Howard Cosell's daily commentary was a big deal, speaking of sports. So he was there, Frank Gifford, Keith Jackson, all these famous sports. I was a reporter. I ran around. I covered the games. I covered the stories. I went to the press conferences. I was a reporter on the beat, on the street, in the locker rooms before and after games. And so I had my tape recorder, you know, that was my instrument of destruction. And I gathered the sound bites. I interviewed the players and, you know, I got the stories. And it's radio, so it was sound for me, as opposed to Gerald, who was, you know, the written word.
So going into the game, did you have any expectations?
Yeah, I expected them to get trounced. That was my expectation. Because I had covered the team and the Russian team. I had covered that Soviet team extensively. I was a big hockey fan. Loved hockey, loved the Rangers. Big hockey fan my whole life. And so when the Soviet team came over to play exhibitions or to play series against the NHL All-Stars, or to play the Olympic team leading up to the Lake Placid games. Oh, I love that Soviet team because, almost like Gerald covering hockey for the first time. They played hockey differently than anybody else I had ever seen in the world. Their style of play was amazing. And what I mean by that is Canadian hockey was dump it in, bang in the corners, and, fight for the puck. That was Canadian hockey. Dump it in, chase it, and fight the guy in the corner to regain possession. That was Canadian hockey. Straightforward, hard-hitting, bloody nose hockey. And then the Soviets come along, and they're ballet dancers. And it was like watching a ballet take place on the ice, which completely confused and confounded all their opposition. Nobody knew how to handle them. And what the ballet looked like was swirling around in circles and swinging around and cycling around the ice, dropping the puck off, holding possession of the puck for long periods of time, even if that meant sending it back into their own end and starting over. They just didn't give it up. And so their style of play was phenomenal, and it was phenomenally successful. You know how good that team was, right?
So one of the things that I find most interesting about this story is how it really kind of reflects, the Cold War and American individualism and being the best.
Well, they were the bad guys. They were the bad guys culturally, and they were painted as the bad guys in the media, the entire country. And of course, as an extension of that, their hockey team was seen as the big bad Soviets. Individually, they were sweet guys, but their team was framed up as the enemy and the bad guys. So it was the good guys against the bad guys. It was David against Goliath, and it was a cultural war as much of it as it was a hockey game. If you remember the time, they had invaded Afghanistan in the 70s, and there were hostages in Iran at that time, and there were gas lines and everything. Jimmy Carter was the president. It was a pretty wild time, and the United States was kind of on its heels at that time too. And the Soviets were seen as this big, bad, dangerous, unbeatable force. And I'm talking about the country and the hockey team. The hockey team had won many, many games in a row, many gold medals in a row. And so going into the game, it was impossible. They had beaten them Soviets had beaten the U.S. 10-3 in an exhibition game a week earlier at Madison Square Garden. And in winning 10-3, they didn't even lace up their skates, They just.
So what was different about that day? And when did you know that it was possible?
Yeah, nothing was different about that day until something happened. And then all of a sudden, the story started to develop. I answered your first question, right, about how did I get to the game? You got that? Working for ABC. But can I just go back to that for 1 second? So I'm working for ABC. So the boss tells me, so it's the Olympics, and I'm covering everything. I'm covering bobsled, luge, downhill skiing, ski jumping, everything, Eric Heiden was the big story there. And I was there for, I think he had, was it 5 or 6 gold medals? 5 or 6. Eric Heiden was the big story at that Olympics. Not the hockey team until they were. So anyway, I was assigned to bobsled or something that afternoon. And I said to the boss, I begged him, please, I'm not going to bobsled. I don't care what you do. I'm not going to bobsled. I'm not going to the Whiteface Mountain. I'm going to the hockey game. I'm going. And he went, well, we have so-and-so assigned over it. I don't care. I'm doing the game. You can get rid. I'll just fire me right now if you want to. But I'm telling you, I'm going to the game. So he said, of course, go to the game. All right. Go to the game. That's how I got the assignment. I had forced my way that far. I'm now a block away from the biggest hockey game of my life and everyone's life. And I'm not going to it. Are you crazy? I'm going to it. So that's what I kind of said to the guy.
So how did you know that it would be a competitive match?
Well, I didn't know that it would be competitive, but I knew that it was big. It was big. It was the U.S. against the Soviets in the medal round, in the playoffs, the first round of the playoffs. And it was a big game. We were probably going to get blasted, but it was a big game. It was a big game.
Especially if you contrast that with bobsledding,
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian makes the team collaboration software that powers enterprise businesses around the world, including over 80% of the Fortune 500. With Atlassian's AI-powered software like Jira, Confluence, and Loom, you'll have more time to do the work that matters. In fact, Atlassian customers experience a 25% reduction in project duration per year. Unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
So remember Megan from the Olympic rink? The one that hooked me up with Denice, who was at the event just like a few hours after I got this assignment? Well, not only did she hook me up with Denice, but she gave me the contact info for the 1980 USA team manager, who then quickly got me the information for the 1980 player, John Harrington, the guy Megan was trying to find at the rink that day. I was able to schedule a call with him, not within the 48 hours, but soon after. His interview was just so good, I decided to integrate it into the episode. From here on out, we'll be jumping between Gerald Eskenazi, New York Times reporter, Curt Chaplin, radio announcer, and John Harrington, 1980 USA national team forward.
Okay, yeah. My name is John Harrington, and I have certainly been in hockey a long time. Been from northern Minnesota, up on the Iron Range there, where everybody plays hockey, and played high school hockey, and then collegiately I played at Minnesota Duluth, and I was invited to try out for the 1980 Olympic team in the summer of 1979, and made the team, and ended up winning a gold medal in Lake Placid in February of 1980.
So, are all the great American hockey players from Minnesota?
No, they're not. But, Minnesota is, I think, is a great producer of a lot of good players because so many young players play here. But they're, on that team, I think we had, I always remember, I think we had 12 players that were from the state of Minnesota. They didn't all play for Minnesota colleges, but they were from the state of Minnesota. So I think there was 12 from Minnesota, 2 from Wisconsin, 2 from Michigan, and then 4 from Massachusetts.
What do you love about ice hockey?
What do I love about it? I just played it. I first started playing probably when I was 6 years old or 7 years old on the outdoor rinks, and I just like the competitiveness of it, and certainly like playing with teammates that understood how to play the game. And I think I've said that over the years, that I've had a chance to play for a lot of great coaches, and in my career in high school and college and Olympics, and then in my coaching at the collegiate level, the people I've worked with. But I remember the most of growing up and playing outside with my friends, and
how much you learned by just watching other players play, and the players that when we were young that we would idolize, the older players, and say, boy, I want to be able to do things like him when I get to be his age. And I think that's what was fun about it is being outside in northern Minnesota and having the little warming shed that you went into and kept the wood fireplace going in there to keep you warm, but getting outside and playing all night and outside hockey. And it just you played with joy, you just had fun doing that because it was a fun game.
So that day in February, did you think that you had a shot?
Well, I think we did. Obviously we had played the Soviets. A week before the Olympics opened was our last game. We played them in Madison Square Garden, and they beat us 10-3. But I think that was an important game for us because we learned a lot about playing against them. We got some experience of playing against them, and we only had a few players on our team who had played against them at any time. I think a few of our guys were in the World Championships and had played against them the year before. So, but I think as we got in the Olympics and got off to a good start, tying Sweden and then beating Czechoslovakia, we gained confidence. I think certainly the fans and everything were gaining confidence and getting excited about our team. And, as we watched the Soviets play, they, had to come from behind. They weren't behind by numerous goals, but they were behind to Canada, behind to Finland, and came back and won both those games. And I think Herb Brooks was really, impressing upon us the fact that we were a much younger team and we're in better condition. They were an older team, and that we could skate with them and that we could play with them. And I just think the confidence we gained over the course of the Olympics made us all think that we had a chance and that we were confident that we could beat them when we played them in the medal round.
What was your position?
I played right wing. I was a forward.
And how was Herb's coaching style different? Like, how did the U.S. team play differently than the Russian team?
When he did put our team together, he certainly wanted great skaters. He wanted people who could really skate, and because he knew that's the way the Soviets played, and the best teams played with speed. And he wanted a team that could do that and could possess the puck and not just, play dump it out of our zone and dump it into their zone and forechecking game. He wanted more of a puck possession team. And I think that's how he coached us. And he often said that he wanted to kind of throw their game back in their face. Like, we're going to play a game against them that they typically play against everybody else. Back
to radio reporter Curt Chaplin.
So I go to the game and all right, I don't have a spot in the press. I have my credential, I don't have a spot in the press box or anything, and I'm not. So I sort of got myself situated just outside the press box in the stands there in that little barn of an arena. And the way I covered games, Knick games, Ranger games, the Yankees and Mets, whatever it is, if it came down to, let's say, the ninth inning, the bases are loaded and it's a full count and it's a tie game and everything, I would do a little play-by-play, into my tape recorder, just in case something happened and the anchorman wanted to use a proprietary play-by-play the next day in their coverage. And it came down to the ninth inning, and here's what happened. Here's Curt Chaplin calling the game, calling them on the call, and you'd hear me do a little thing, right? So I get to the game and I get situated, there was nowhere in the stands except I found a little space underneath an ABC television camera on the platform. So I'm down by the cameraman's ankles, kind of punched under the camera where he couldn't really see me. I was under the camera, but I was down by his feet, and I'm hunched on the platform. And so the game's about to start, and it's I don't know I'm thinking I don't know what's going to happen here.
Back to player John Harrington. So what do you remember about that day?
I just remember how exciting it was, to be going in there, and just the energy that was in the building. And, the crowd, it seemed like it was a game-long standing ovation, and I've always said that, like, just for a line shift, you'd get a standing ovation, but it was great. And I remember in the locker room, everybody had their own way of getting ready for games, like they always did, just kind of their routine. And some guys were wired and squeezing their sticks and had their game faces on, and other guys could joke and kind of be funny, but that's just how they got ready. But it was great to be in that situation and have that opportunity, knowing that we were in the medal round and had a chance to win a medal.
How did you prepare?
I just got ready for the games the way I always did. I mean, I'm a guy that likes getting jacked up about it and getting excited about it and ready to go. So when that game got started, I was ready to play and was excited to be in that atmosphere.
Back to Curt.
It's probably not going to be good, but who the hell knows? So what if someone scores a goal in the first 30 seconds and the game ends 1-0? Are you going to have the play-by-play of that? And I said, start the tape recorder. Let's go. Let's get it going here just in case. So Mark Johnson came out and Boris Mikhailov come out for the face-off. And as the referee skated out with the puck, I started into a play-by-play right there, right at the beginning. That's where I started. And I think my first words were, Johnson for the U.S., Mikhailov for the Russians, and here we go. And, I started it right there. I had no color man with me. I had nothing. I just had I had 3 cassettes, though. I was smart enough to bring enough cassette tape to cover the whole game. And then I just started praying that my batteries lasted in my tape recorder. So I launched into the play-by-play right there. And I wound up doing the entire game, all 3 periods, and the celebration afterward and everything. I didn't know I was going to do that. I had no idea I was going to do that. But I just kept going because the story kept developing. And that was the only hockey game I ever called in my entire life. Thank you, Murray. Thank you, Eskenazi, Gerald Eskenazi. I mean, I'd covered hockey, but I'd never done play-by-play of a game before for 3 periods, except, I picked a pretty good one to do, I guess. All right, so here's what happened. So the game starts, and it's like, all right, we're like 5 minutes into the game. It's still 0-0. This is good. People thought it would be 3-0, after 6 minutes, but it wasn't. And so the Russians score the first goal of the game. I'm calling the game. And so the Russians score. Okay, and everybody in the rink figures, okay, here we go. And a few minutes later, the Americans tied the game up. I'm still doing the play-by-play, of course, the whole time. And the Americans tied the game up. We didn't think they were going to even score a goal, right?
1-0 Russia with 6:01 to play in the first period. Here comes Buzz Schneider. Score! Inside the blue line, and the United States has tied it up 1 apiece.
So they get a goal on Tretiak. They have the Russians have the greatest goalie in the world, Tretiak, unbeatable. And Buzz Schneider fires a shot, like a slap shot from the blue line, that he has a clear look at, and the puck beats him over the shoulder and in the net. And it's 1-1 now. In the first period, it's 1-1. Not only is it 1-1, but Tretiak kind of like, he didn't make a good play on that. Tretiak kind of, let's call that a mistake. Not a mistake, but uncharacteristically, he let that goal go in. All right, fine. Now it's 1-1. Now it's kind of exciting. The fans got going right there. When the U.S. scored, it was like, holy smokes, we scored on the Soviets. This is amazing. The Soviets made it 2-1 in the first period. It's still a close game, very exciting. It's not 8-0, like no one could believe it. It's not 8-0. That was the story. It's not 8-0 was the story. It's 2-1. And then the big moment of the game happened at the end of the first period. You know what happened right at the end? At the end of the first period, the clock is ticking down, and it's 2-1, and it's, not the worst thing in the world. With like 15 seconds to go or 10 seconds to go, the U.S., one of the defensemen, I guess it was Baker, he rushes the puck up the ice and just fires in a desperation, last-second shot from the red line as the last few seconds on the clock are ticking off. So he fires it on goal, and the goalie Tretiak makes the biggest mistake of his career, in the history of Russian hockey, the biggest mistake, and in the history of Olympic hockey, period. And maybe hockey, period. In the game of hockey, he makes the biggest blunder in the history of hockey. It's almost not an overstatement to say this, because this game might be, if this game is the biggest game in hockey history, which it might be, it's arguably, then this mistake by Tretiak is the biggest blunder in hockey history. The puck's fired in, the clock's ticking down like 4 seconds, 3, and he just stacks the pad standing up and allows a rebound to come out. He just makes the save and figures that's it, the period's over. But the period wasn't over. 3 seconds, 2 seconds. Here comes Mark Johnson flying past the defenseman, grabs the puck, veers to his left, and fires it into the net. Tretiak out of position, net open, fires the puck into the net. Zeros on the clock. It counts. The game is tied 2-2. Now it's 2-2 at the end of the first period. Everyone's going crazy. It's 2-2. What a way to end the first period. Holy shit. No one could believe it. Really.
15 seconds to go in the period, and it's cleared out. Morrow's got to come back into his own zone to get it with 10-9 now left in the period. A drop pass for Christian with 6 seconds. Comes to the red line and shoots one in. Off the pads. Here's Johnson. He scores! It's good with no time left on the clock. Mark Johnson, no time left on the clock. It's going to count. The U.S. ties the game 2-2. And the Soviets are banging their sticks on the ice. A poor play by goalie Tretiak, who let that rebound come right out in front. It was Mark Johnson who swooped in and shot it behind him. The game is tied 2-2. And that's the end of the first period.
So now it's 2-2 after 1. U.S. 2, Russia 2. I can't even believe I'm saying that, Okay. Between periods, I saw this in Jonathan Hawk's movie, the 30 for 30 movie, a couple of movies about the game where they interviewed the Soviet players and everything. Apparently, between periods, the KGB, I didn't witness this. This is just hearsay on my part. The KGB marches into the Russian dressing room and demands to know how you made that mistake. Why did you do that? What a blunder. They want an explanation from the coach, Tikhonov, as to that terrible blunder. They're embarrassed. And what they wind up doing is they pull Tretiak from the game and bench him and put in their backup goalie. What was his name? Mishkin. Now this little dwarfy guy named Mishkin is in there. He's probably the second best goalie in the world for all I know. He's the Russian backup goalie. He's fantastic, but he's not Tretiak. So the second period, they skate out. They're ready to start the second period, and I look down. I start my tape recorder. I look down, and I go, and in the intermission, the Russians have replaced starting goalie Tretiak with Phil Mishkin. What I don't say is, who the hell is he? But Tretiak is on the bench. That's amazing. So the Russians pull Tretiak, the greatest goalie in the world. And the second period starts. It's 2-2. That's when everyone in the arena already knew. We all knew that this is going to be crazy. What is going on? Everyone was freaking out.
Back to John.
We were very surprised. I mean, they pulled they pulled Tradiak out of the net. He was, I think certainly recognized as the top goaltender in the world, not just in international play, but at any level of hockey, professional hockey included. But I think that was when that goal went in right at the end of the period. I think I don't know if their coach was trying to do something to excite their team or to make a change on their team. But yeah, when we came out, it was really something when we looked down there, and it's like, hey, they've pulled Tradiak and they've put their second string goalie in. And, certainly that gave you a little bit of a jump start, because we're going, hey, we're not going against the best goaltender in the world right now for the last two periods. They typically were there in control of the game, and they're in control of the puck. And all of a sudden now they had to try some things that were different for their approach to the game, because the game wasn't going the way they expected it to.
Back to Curt Chaplin.
The second period ensues, and I call the whole thing. I call the whole period again. It's probably going to be 10-2 at the end of the second period. That's the thought. The Russians are mad now because of that late Mark Johnson goal. Here we go. They're going to spank us now and make us pay. And the second period ends with the score: Russia 3, United States 2. What? And as I listen back to it, in my voice, that's exactly how I said it in my play-by-play. After doing the whole period, I said, that's the end of the second period with the score: Russia 3, United States 2. It's like, I'm saying, like, holy shit, this is amazing. What's going on here? Is this possible? All right, so that was the end of the second period. That's one shot away from tying a game. I mean, anything can happen with the score 3-2, unless they make it 4-2, 5-2, and 6-2. Meanwhile, they haven't done that somehow, and that's a miracle already. It's already a miracle. Al, I'm talking to Al Michaels. Al, it's already a miracle. It's 3-2 after 2. It's a miracle already. I mean, don't be surprised now. Be ready. All right, I was ready. I was ready for what might happen next. They were playing great. Jim Craig was playing out of his mind. They were playing great. All right, so the third period starts in 3-2. And it is, you can imagine how exciting it was in the third period, 3-2 against Russia, who had beaten everybody else in the tournament and in the Olympics 17-1 and 12-0 and 10-1. It's 3-2. They didn't have any 3-2 games, Russia.
Yeah.
So we're in the third period, and it's 3-2, and it's 3-2, and it's 3-2. And we're halfway through the third period. It's 3-2. And the U.S. is getting some scoring chances. And they're threatening a little bit. Craig gets lucky. The Russians hit the post. It's still 3-2. And then, the Russians take a stupid penalty in the offensive zone. The guy just trips. Golikov, I think, trips John Harrington in the offensive zone. It's dumb, as we would call in hockey, a dumb penalty, right?
Yeah. Back to John. Did you have playing time?
Yeah, and like for us, I mean, we had like lines of players, and I would say that we were in the rotation and played a regular shift and getting out on the ice. So it was a great game, and I think that everybody was working hard to think the game right as well as to play the game hard. So there was some tense moments in the game, but also I think too when we took the lead with 10 minutes left in the game, I think last 10 minutes everybody would say, I'm sure everybody on our team has said that was probably the longest 10 minutes we've ever played. That last 10 minutes trying to get the clock to move to 0.
Back to Curt.
All right, power play halfway through the third. This is unbelievable. 3-2. What a chance this is. And they tie the game on that power play. Mark Johnson scores and ties it up at the 10-minute mark. It's 3-3. It's 3-3 with 10 minutes left in the game. Unbelievable.
19 seconds to go. in the power play. 11:29 in the game, and this could be the last opportunity on this power play for the U.S. Here they come. Silk, a centering pass. Scores! Mark Johnson on the pass from Silk. It's a tie hockey game. Who would have believed it? The entire U.S. team comes off the bench to congratulate Mark Johnson, who has just scored his second goal of the game. It's a power play goal. Dave Silk will get the assist.
And you know what happened after that? About 2-3 minutes later, Eruzione, they take the lead 4-3, pandemonium in the place, insanity in the arena. Everyone's screaming. They just scream for the last 6-8 minutes. 7-5, 4-3, comes down to the end, and the clock ran out. And it was what was it, 4-3? What was the score now? 4-3, yeah.
Christian comes away, and Christian swings around his own goal and out to center to Schneider with a long shot. Good save by Mishkin. Off his hands to the far corner. Pavlich comes over. It's knocked out. Eruzione shoots! Scores! Eruzione has scored, and the United States leads it 4-3. They are going crazy. Eruzione from about 20 feet has given the United States the lead.
And the clock runs out. They tie it and they win it in the third period. And Al Michaels screams, "Do you believe in miracles?" Yes. I think he was ready. Al's a pro. Al had done a lot of hockey and a lot of sports. Al knows that when you're doing the game on network television, you better have your ending ready. That's like, have your story written, know what you're going to say, know what you're going to do. Don't get caught at the end with nothing to say and not knowing what you're going to do. Well, so he was ready, and he nailed it. Me, I had no idea I was going to be in that situation. I wasn't ready for anything. I was just going with the emotion of the crowd and everything, and I did my own thing. I didn't say, "Do you believe in miracles?" Yes. But I did the whole game my way, and the whole celebration for the next 5 minutes until they finally left the ice. And that became the Lost Lennon tapes of the Miracle on Ice. I am the Lost Lennon tapes. I'm the secret lost call that has now been uncovered.
Petrov now winds and shoots from the blue line. Kick saved by Craig. 30 seconds to play. Puck is back out to center. Varlamov now looking to shoot it in. The Russians looking tired as they press for the tying goal. 20 seconds to play. Mark Johnson for the U.S. Behind his own net, Ramsey. Big collision between Ramsey and Vilyanov. McConaughey comes over. Puck is free. 10 seconds to play. If they can clear it here. 4, 3, 2, 1. It is over. The U.S. has beaten Russia.
Back to New York Times award-winning journalist Gerald Eskenazi. So how did you feel when they won? Were you euphoric, or did you consider yourself a fan by this point, or were you squarely a reporter?
Well, I hope that you don't think less of me, but all I was concerned about was writing the damn thing. And I thought to myself, this may be the biggest story I've had, or I'm going to have. What do I say now? What is my lead? And I was, back then in the old journalism, the lead, that first sentence, that first paragraph was so important. And all I was thinking about was how I was going to write the story. I did not have the time to feel euphoric. And the other part of it was I had to get my story into the basement, and I had to get someone. And in the middle of this turmoil with people yelling and screaming, there was no way to get to the basement. And I devised a way to get my story down to the basement in front of, while the fans milling about yelling "USA, USA."
How did you do it?
Well, I took my story. I wrote my story in my Olivetti typewriter. I crumpled the first page up into a ball, and we sent our Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Dave Anderson to the floor below. And I threw the paper down to him in a ball to the floor below. He caught the paper and brought it down to the press room in the basement. Then he came back up, waited for me to type my second page. I typed my second page, crumpled it up into a ball, threw it down to him, and he brought the story down to the basement to be transcribed to the Times. So that's how I transmitted the story of the U.S. victory over the Soviet Union.
That's incredible. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story, and it's true.
Do you remember what your lead was?
I think it was my page one story above the fold, which I believe was the only time I ever had a story we call above the fold. You know, when you fold a regular style newspaper, in half. I believe it was the upstart United States team defeated the Soviet Union, et cetera, et cetera. But I think I used the word upstart. And I don't know whether I would, if I had more time to think about it, was that my best word? Was that my best adjective? But I remember doing that about the upstart United States team defeated the Soviet Union, which is really what happened. Was this young team, beat this veteran Soviet team.
Imagine a world-class graduate education that's accessible, flexible, and designed for career impact. That's Harvard Extension School. Build actionable knowledge and skills in challenging online classes taught by Harvard faculty and industry experts. Explore new opportunities and expand your network with high-achieving professionals from around the world. Part-time learning. Real-world impact. This is Harvard on your terms. Learn more at extension.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Build a routine with Ollie that supports your wellness needs, like getting your daily vitamins and minerals with Ollie's multi-gummies, or keeping your mood upbeat with all the vitamin D in Hello Happy. Give your gut health some support with probiotics, and wake up feeling refreshed after taking Ollie Sleep. Do wellness on your terms. Find Ollie at a Walmart or Target near you, or at ollie.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
It's time to rewrite the vacation rules. With Royal Caribbean, your family can look forward to just about anything. Break the thrill barrier, roaring down the tallest water slide in North America. Jump into breathtaking jungles and jaw-dropping coves. Vibe off the charts on our private island Perfect Day at Coco Cay. And end the day knowing things are just getting started. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
Back to player John Harrington. Do you remember what it felt like to win?
Well, yeah, it was an amazing thing, and to just to be in our locker room after the game, and really just somewhere between like unbelievable joy and excitement that we had won that game against the Soviets, but also kind of looking and like, did that just happen? Did we won, right? And we're like, yeah, we won. Yeah, we won. We won that game and beat the Soviets. And it was crazy. I mean, it was crazy in the locker room and crazy when we got out of the locker room and trying to get outside and the fans that were, literally jammed up against the building wanting to see the players or talk to the players or get autographs or just be around them. So it was crazy. And, but it was an amazing atmosphere.
What did you do after the game?
Well, I think that game, we still had to play another one. We still had to play Finland, and it was, it wasn't like it was a semifinal to get to a final. It was based on points. So, I mean, we had to win, or certainly to win the gold medal. We had to beat Finland 2 days later. So, and I think after the game, certainly we probably went out for a little bit and had something to drink, but just said, hey, we've got to get back because of 2 days. If we beat Finland, we know we're going to be gold medalists here in the Olympic Games.
Back to New York Times award-winning journalist Gerald Eskenazi. So how did this game change hockey?
Oh well, it really made I think it made hockey a mainstream sport in the United States. And then there was so much stuff that's surrounding it. You know, the last seconds of the game, when it was almost over, Al Michaels, the announcer, screamed, "Do you believe in miracles?" And then as the buzzer sounded, he yelled, "Yes," you know, and so that game became known as the Miracle on Ice. Helped, I believe, by about 2 weeks later, the New York Times printed a compilation of all their stories in a book. Most of them were my stories of the game and surrounding the game, and the book was called Miracle on Ice. And that became the sort of symbol of U.S. hockey and the United States. And I believe a movie that they made of it ultimately was called Miracle on Ice.
So how is it that a guy from Brooklyn who didn't know much about hockey ends up being sort of the foremost reporter on the most important hockey game probably ever? How does it feel that kind of ice hockey defines your career or defines your, I should say, notoriety?
Well, I reveled in it. I loved the fact that I was always being interviewed. I loved the fact that I was always going to do radio stuff. I wrote 4 or 5 books on hockey, among the 15 books that I was fortunate enough to write. It just, I think it was, I think that what happened was that I was taken by the players. I think that ultimately, the humanity in sports, I think should always drive the writers, and not just the result. Al Michaels, the announcer who used the word miracle, "Do you believe in miracles?" Some weeks later ran into Herb at a banquet, and Brooks said to him, "Al, your call was a little bit over the top, wasn't it?" But it wasn't, because miracle, to this day, it's called the Miracle on Ice. And when you look back at it, was it a miracle? I mean, I guess a miracle is something that God puts his hand on. It's not supposed to happen normally, and who knows? Here is this youngest team that the U.S. had ever assembled in sports, youngest sports team ever. The average age was about 21 years old. And here they beat the 4-time Olympic champions, all these college kids, and and very, very young pros and high school dropouts. And was it a miracle? Well, yeah, I guess it wasn't supposed to happen.
What was it about the American team that? Is it because they were sort of scrappy and they didn't think they were the best? Like, what was it about them that made them charming or likable?
Yeah, well, they were scrappy. That's a good word. They were scrappy. They also had fun in what they were doing, and they believed. I think that Herb. One of the things that Herb Brooks told them was that you were meant to be here. And so they saw themselves as sort of ambassadors in a way, for this American style of play that they were going to show the world. And I think that was, and they had lots of fun in the locker room, and there was a lot of kidding around. And I thought that they were just fun to be around.
There was joy.
They were young college kids for the most part, or older college kids.
But that's a fact that there was the joy among that team, and I think that that's part of what shines through. Maybe it is about Soviet versus U.S., but it's also just a team that didn't have the expectation of winning.
Yeah.
Like, that's always, when you're coming in as the underdog, there's always something kind of charming, I find, about the underdog.
Also, if you look in the if you look in the archives, anyone looking in the archives, when they beat Finland, there is Jim Craig, the goalie, with a flag draped over him, and he's looking up in the stands. And I asked him about it, later, and I said, who are you looking for? And he says, I was saying, where's my father?
Aww.
And it just thought that was just a wonderful little touch.
Back to player John Harrington. How did this game change your life?
Oh, I don't know if it changed my life. It was something I had, dreamt about doing probably from the time I was in high school, watching Olympics on TV and actually knowing some of the players that played on the Olympic team, or at least knowing them by name, that played in like 1976. But I think, after winning that, obviously our team had a lot of opportunity to do things together and make appearances together, which was a lot of fun. But pretty much everybody went on, whether it was, mostly to professional hockey, and a couple of guys went back to college for another year that were underclassmen when they played on the Olympic team. So you kind of moved on and went to the next thing. But I think for me, going into coaching after I got done playing and coached for a long time, I think it certainly helped that, because I always understood, how much hard work and preparation and the ability to have your team play together and to be better than maybe the individual parts that you had on your team. I think those are things that I all learned that I think helped me be a better coach, and certainly to be a more successful coach as far as wins and losses.
So I had one other question, and then I'm done. What was the question? I just slipped my brain. Oh, yeah. So because the Cold War was going on, was that playing at all into how you were experiencing the game?
I have to say not. And I for all the times I thought to myself, geez, when our team gets together, when we do things together, I'd like to kind of throw that question out there and see how everybody else has answered that over the years, But I think for me, I would just remember like focusing on what we were doing as far as the Olympics. Like, that's what we were trying to do, is play hockey there and play it to the best of our ability. And we were trying to be successful in the games. And I couldn't say personally that I was motivated to play against the Soviet Union because of, they invaded Afghanistan, or holding hostages, or the Cold War, and, everything going on with that. I think I was concentrated on trying to play hockey the best I could. And I would think most of our other guys could, but after the games got over, I think our team found out how much it had affected the rest of the United States. Like everybody, it seemed, had been watching those games and going, here, look at these young guys, like really showing what the U.S. is all about and how they can be successful, and we can be better than them. And we just showed it with these guys. And it just seemed, we had opportunities to travel around and do some appearances, and it just, listening to people and having them say how much it meant to them in their life and in their job and how they approach things, to see the success we had and the enthusiasm of which we did it with. So I think it was more like that, and it wasn't something that was I wouldn't say was on our team's minds as we went into the Olympic Games.
So the story goes, the lasting power of this game was about the Cold War. The U.S. was down economically, and so was the morale of the American people. This game was the lift the country needed. The American media ran with it. The Russian communists versus the capitalist United States manifested on a rundown ice rink in Lake Placid during the 1980 Olympics. High stakes, real high stakes. This game became the symbol of America's dominance on the world stage. But for me, I have to say, after all the documentaries I watched about Miracle on Ice, with the sound of the American anthem and the talk of American exceptionalism, it just didn't totally resonate with me. It almost felt like the legend replaced the magic of the actual game. So this assignment gave me a reason to watch the archive of the game. And it was so much better, So much better than that Cold War legend. It was just a phenomenal level of hockey. I was drawn to what Gerald Eskenazi said early in our interview. A good sports story is about the players, the human part of things. And these American players played with so much heart and grit. It almost looked like they were moving on fast forward. Every time the U.S. inched toward victory, the arena sounded like pure mayhem, fans leaping into the air. There was no chance this group of young men was meant to topple a team stacked with veterans and 4 consecutive gold medals. And they did. I'm pretty sure they weren't thinking about politics. I think they were thinking, let's win this game. Let's fucking win this game. And that's what they did. Leave the rest of the meaning-making to the writers and historians. I will say, after watching that game, I certainly believe in miracles and the magic of sports. You can't always predict the outcome.
You Had to Be There is a Hi Barr production, created by Hi Barr. All episodes written, edited, and hosted by Julia Thompson. Produced by Julia Thompson and Webb Barr. Additional editing, sound mix, and engineering by Vishal Nayak. Opening score by Teeny Lieberson. Artwork created by Dylan Lathrop. Special thanks to our parents, friends, and chosen family. And most importantly, thank you to the artists who have inspired us, because they had to do it.